Hello, my dear students, and welcome back. And today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We are going to be doing a review of Fan War. Now, those who watch my videos religiously and have stuck with me for a long time, you may remember this guy because I did a review of one of his fights as a double review when I tackled the infamous 100th episode of Death Battle that was a complete and utter failure. And I got a request by some fans to tackle his episode of Sonic vs. Crash, and I can see why. This episode is pretty bad, and unfortunately it's Death Battle levels of failure. However, I want to explain before we begin, while I will be using the same setup I use for my Death Battle reviews, I don't have any sort of animosity towards Fan War. He is a nice guy, and I have worked with him before on my pilot episode of Blood Royale. So please, if you do go to criticize him, don't be ruthless like you are when I send you after Death Battle. Just try to give him some constructive criticism because he really isn't a bad guy and he is just a one-man party for the most part, trying to run a show and give competition to Death Battle like I'm trying to do with Blood Royale. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin.
Where are you supposed to be? Whoa! Try to keep up!
Fight!
Way past cool! Now I'll show you! You're too slow.
Now, let's get some of the obvious things out of the way first. This matchup is terrible. As I alluded to in the beginning, this is a pretty bad matchup. Like, this is something like Death Battle would put together, but I don't even know if even Death Battle would be this moronic. Now, I did leave a comment in his comment section, and he did tell me that he did this matchup because of a friend or something. While I guess that's a nice gesture, what you have to understand when you're doing matchups like this is you have to make sure the characters are actually compatible while still having traits in common. Because if you don't, and you just do matchups based on characters that you like, what you think will be cool, or just doing matchups for the sake of a friend, then you can end up with some pretty god-awful matchups, and this one is no exception. This is a hilariously bad spite. Probably more so of a spite and one shot than even Spyro vs. Crash. And if you remember my top 10 list of the worst death battles, I put Spyro vs. Crash really high up on that list. Spyro vs. Crash was easily one of the worst death battles they have ever done because the matchup was so hilariously unbalanced. Crash had no chance of ever being able to defeat Spyro. His chances were zero. However, though, when even your animators can't make the fight look good in any capacity because Crash literally has no way of even being able to fight Spyro without dying hilariously, you know you're in trouble, and this one isn't much better. Now, I noticed he does seem to use the video game version of Sonic rather than the comic book version of Sonic, which I guess is fine considering it's video game versus video game, I guess. However, it is worth noting that when you have to use the weakest version of Sonic to keep the match from being so hilariously unbalanced, then again, you know you're in trouble. And there's really no way in hell Crash would have had any chance against Sonic, and even Fan War flat out states this, that he literally had one shot against Sonic, and that was only through the power of Aku Aku, which is a huge problem. That should have clicked in his head that this is not a good idea, because Crash would die in a matter of seconds if he fought someone like Sonic. Even when you're using the significantly weaker video game version of Sonic, which may not be as overpowered as the comic book version, even the video game version of Sonic is pretty OP. I mean, he was able to go toe-to-toe with Shadow the Hedgehog, and he was really, really powerful. Hell, for Christ's sake, Shadow and Sonic were able to use Chaos Control to move a moon-busting space station from destroying Earth, which at the very least would have destroyed the entire planet. So this isn't really all that great. And the animation, while, again, this is just one guy for the most part, so it's not as insulting as when Death Battle screws up an animation because they have the resources to make something incredible, but this is one man. However, one of my biggest issues I have with the animation here is everything is way too crunched together. The screen is cropped at such a tiny degree that you can barely see anything of what's going on. It feels like there's no scale. Everything feels absolutely cramped to it. And I don't know if this is because he's just not able to animate something to the degree that Death Battle is. However, I know that isn't the case because his fight I did review, Red versus Sonic.exe, actually wasn't half bad. So the way this is cropped, I can't think of any reason why it's cropped and why everything is so crunched. Everything feels so close. So I guess that's just one criticism, but overall, the rest of the matchup and fight isn't much better. I mean, because I'm over here thinking that realistically Crash would be dead before the fight would even begin. He wouldn't even have the ability to even react to any of Sonic's attacks. While there's a lot of speculation on the true speed of Sonic, at the very least, most people will tell you that Sonic is at the very lowest faster than light, which is definitely more than enough. It's definitely more than Crash can handle. And the animation doesn't really do much here for me. It's not a very exciting fight due to how cramped everything feels. And everything also feels kind of slow. Like, for a character like Sonic, you kind of need to have a little bit more of a fast pace going on, because when everything just feels so slow, it's like, what's really the point? And the music, I guess I can understand the point of using the Sonic music to try to replicate the retro feel of Sonic that fans love so much. But I do wish there could have been a little bit more done with a more exciting soundtrack, because you'd be surprised how much of a difference music can make. Another criticism I have, now I admit this is a criticism I don't really experience very often doing these types of videos, but why is your analysis fan war very featless? Like, you mention the feats of these characters, but you don't actually break them down. Like, part of understanding the power difference between characters is going over the mathematics of these feats and figuring out the true destructive capability or the true speed of the character. So why is it that when you bring up their feats, you don't ever break any of them down? Now, I'm not saying that you need to break down every single feat, because if you did, the video would be much longer. However, why not at least break down some of their most impressive feats so we can truly have an understanding of just how powerful these characters are? When you just list their feats, it just comes off like a checklist. And that's what I kind of get from your analysis. It's just everything is just a checklist while going over the character, and it doesn't really feel like a true analysis because you're not truly breaking these characters down. You're describing them, but you're not analyzing them. You are not truly breaking down how powerful these characters are, which is what the main point of this is supposed to be. To understand the power of these two characters and figure out, through objective facts, who would win between the two. And this is something that even Death Battle is able to accomplish. Hell, even Animation Rewind is capable of this to an extent, and I consider Animation Rewind to be extremely bottom of the barrel trash. Anyone who knows me knows I do not think very highly of Animation Rewind. Set the Programmer is more credible than Animation Rewind, and Set the Programmer is a fucking punchline in the Versus community. So, overall, I am very disappointed with this matchup. And I know that the only reason why people want to see this matchup is because furries. And hey, let's have Sonic, the Sega mascot, fight Sony's mascot, because that went so well when Death Battle did Mario vs. Sonic. Now, didn't it?
Liar!
So, overall, this is not a good episode, and this is definitely a low point for Fan War, and I am officially putting Fan War on notice, because this is a pretty bad matchup, and my final score would be a 2 out of 10. I'm not going to show any mercy here. I understand that he is smaller and more independent. However, he is larger than me, so that still counts for something. And like I said, there are some mishaps here that are more lower than Death Battle. When you end up failing worse than Death Battle, that's a huge problem, because, like I said, Death Battle lately has been pretty terrible, and if you can't do a better job than Death Battle, then you're in some deep shit. So that is my thoughts on Crash vs. Sonic. Please let me know if you have any other episodes of Fan War you would like me to tackle. I'll consider doing more if, at the very least, it will keep me away from Death Battle because I'm really getting sick and tired of them, and I'm trying my best to avoid talking about them, but my fans really insist on torturing me with it. But I do still love you guys, and before I go, I am going to leave a link to a Twitter poll in the description and in the comment section of the next video that I am going to make, which is going to be a review. So if you want to have a say in the next video that's going to be made, please check the link to the poll that I will leave and leave any suggestions you may have. I am very vocal with my audience and I love to listen to your guys' feedback. And I'll see you guys around next time.